What's going on? You're really going to laugh when you see this on YouTube, right? So make sure you don't get any of the students, because I don't want any of them to be inadvertently in the video.
Smash something.
I'm searching high and low at this point in the semester. We're almost to week 7 to try to get a point across. And I finally said, you know what, I'll use myself as an example and make fun of myself a little bit, and maybe that will help. So that's why I brought you here today. Does anybody know what I'm wearing?
Construction.
It's a specific type, yes, it is some type of construction.
You were a contractor.
You know, contractors do wear these, yeah. What are they called?
Tool belt.
Tool belt, very good. Very good. All right. What would you think you'd have in a tool belt class?
Hammer. Tools.
Tools!
Oh, wow.
Tools, specifically tools. I want to share with you a few things I have in my tool belt and see if we can make some connections between, say, a carpenter on a work site that's doing, say, a woodworking project or some type of basic construction project, and kind of what we might do here in Newswriting, okay? Or start with this thing. What's this?
Tape measure.
A tape measure, right? What would a carpenter or somebody doing a household project do with the tape measure?
Measures the house.
Yeah, you're going to scope out the project, right? Hey, I need to get a new pipe. How long has that pipe have to be? Right? You could measure and you would know what it is. Or you could take the old one off and don't let anybody use that bathroom for a day or two or whatever it is, right? But the tape measure kind of gives you a feeling for the project, right? In Newswriting, when we're looking at a fact sheet, or we're looking at a set of information, that's kind of like the same as a tape measure, all right? And you also have to understand that the tape measure may also give you some specifications. Once in a while, you're going to get something, hey, it's supposed to be so many paragraphs or so many words, all right? So you begin to measure in your own way for something like that, all right? This is easier than a tape measure, right? What are these?
Screwdrivers.
Yeah, I've got 2 here.
Philip had a flathead.
You got it, yeah, and they're both from Stanley, which makes pretty good screwdrivers. These things are old. These are probably, it's about 30 years old. I've used them a lot.
Stanley though.
Yeah. These represent a basic tool that we need in Newswriting. And the tool I want to equate this to is like grammar and usage and punctuation. If there is a flat-headed screw and you try to pick up a Phillips, is that screw going to go anywhere? No way at all. All right. If it is a Phillips and you pick up a flathead, you might be able to turn it a little bit, but you're not going to get the job done anyways near as you need to. Punctuation and usage of grammar is kind of like the right tools to get the job done. All right, and that's why it's important that you master it. And when you see it incorrect, as we saw in assignment 9, that you make sure that things aren't incorrect. Before I forget, by the way, I almost forgot maybe the most important thing in my tool belt. Sometimes I have to outline the project, write a little illustration or a diagram, and then I take this with me to Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever I'm going, and I might write 11 by 17 or 2 by 4 or whatever it is on it that I need to pick up. All right? Don't hesitate to outline your story before you start writing. All right? And again, we talked about this way back in week 2, like, okay, a beginning and 3 key points and an ending. As you gather information, you need to sit down and say, okay, I've got way too much information. Let me kind of outline it and make sense of it all to winnow it down. All right? Like in assignment 9, that was intentional that you got way more information than you needed. The idea is to outline it and knock it down a little bit so you don't get everything that you need. All right. Next tool you may not have seen too much of. Anybody know? Have you ever used this, guys?
Is that a leveler thing?
No, it's not a leveler. Although there is a use for levelers, right? I should have brought a leveler. What would a leveler be the equivalent of in a Newswriting story?
Making sure it's balanced.
Yeah, exactly. Balance out.
See?
Yeah, so I'm presenting one side, make sure I present the other side, yeah. This is an electronic punch tool, and it's used by electricians and old telephone system operators and things like that. And you put it into a slot where there's an electrical connection, and you connect a wire to the connector. All right? And the reason that I brought the electronic punch tool is for some of the finer aspects of writing. What are some of the finer things we work on in this class? 20% of your grade could be on a lead, right? All right. 10 or 15% could be on a nut graph. All right. 15% could be on the story structure. So a specialized tool, when you understand how to use that, can help you be more successful in that. And then any good carpenter or craftsman or specialist is gonna have one of these in his toolbox, right? Don't turn me into the
Box
security
cutter.
people, right? This one is actually called an X-Acto knife or a box knife, yeah. All right, and what do you do with this thing?
Cuts up things.
Yeah, and usually in news writing, you have more information being presented to you than you need. All right? So keep that thought in mind, especially with today's assignment that you're going to be working on. You're going to have a lot more information than you need, so what's the most essential thing? And then you go ahead and cut everything else out. Now, there's one thing that I brought today that I haven't talked about yet, right? What's that?
Hammer. Your goggles.
Hammer and goggles. Yeah, let's talk a little bit briefly about both of these. This is an intentional small hammer. It's looked for little framing and done little pieces of nails and woods and things like that. What do we use a hammer for news writers?
Put things. Hammering out the unnecessary things.
It's almost a partner with the knife. With the knife, I'm going to chop things out, and with the hammer, I might need to pound something one way or the other way to get it to work. All right? It might mean a follow-up phone call. It might mean a clarification from a source. It might mean I've got to really understand if this is a beneficial thing or a harmful thing. So let me bounce it off another source and get their reaction to it. Okay. Good news writers won't hesitate once in a while to pick out and use a hammer. All right. The key thing is you don't rely on any one of these tools, right? You rely on a combination, and if you know the right tool at the right time, your story is going to end really well. And then the last thing are these, which I don't use too often at home, but I do use once in a great while, right? Why do these exist? What do they do?
Protect your eyes.
Yeah, yeah. If I'm using a drill or a saw, and there are special types of saws like skill saws and band saws and radio saws where if you're not careful you could lose, a splinter could hit your eye or could lose part of a finger or something like that. Okay, yeah, I've known people that do woodwork that have done things like that to their appendages. There are times in news writing when you almost have to protect yourself because you're dealing with, I'll call it a volatile situation. What would be a volatile situation?
Covering riots.
A riot? Multiple arrests?
Fire.
A fire? Deaths? Some type of catastrophe? Remember we said, what was some of the advice they were giving? Wear boots when you go to a fire? Right? That was one of the things we talked about on Tuesday. All right? You have to be prepared for those types of situations as well. All right? So I hope you've enjoyed my little comparison analogy here, you know, between being a home handyman, and this is stuff I use at home all the time. At least 3 or 4 times a year I gear up and my wife makes a list of things.
I need to.
But right now it's pretty slight, like remove the snow and make sure we get the cars in and out of the driveway, and that's about all that's on the list right now. But when the weather gets nicer, you know, that will change. But having said that, I want you to think about how you use your tools and realize that you got to be able to use all these tools somewhat. And there should be a couple of these tools that you're going to be able to use excellently, especially if you can understand how to use that knife and that hammer and do a good outline and get everything into great order. You'll end up with a better story as you progress in news writing.